As a gamer, I have been through countless worlds, universes, dimensions, even, through the medium of video games. Medieval, high fantasy, futuristic space, modern day, post-apocalyptic. I've seen it all. Unbeknownst to most players, however, these worlds don't just happen. They are designed, they are created from scratch, they are conceptualized, and they are built. Every single nook and cranny, generally, unless they're like a procedural game, we don't talk about those, is put together deliberately. Now, what distinguishes a game level from a game world is considering the world beyond the player. So basically, let's talk about Fallout. I'm a firm believer that Bethesda has fucked up Fallout as a series in many ways. However, Bethesda is a master, if nothing else, at creating worlds that feel lived in, populated, like a real world. They're not just a series of levels. Morrowind, Skyrim, Fallout 4, all of these games feel like there's people who live there. That you are a visitor into somebody else's world. Except for the faces. You may not think about it, but being able to walk into a bathroom stall in Fallout 4 and seeing the remnants of people who live there, like teddy bears, reading newspapers, or bottled water, or medicine stored in a cache in the toilet, is revolutionary for the game industry. Because Bethesda took the time to think about the detail of, oh my god, people have to take shits, which we know is a reality, but a lot of game makers and games in general take for granted. Where do people shit? But I'm not talking about that today. I'm not talking about toilets. Today I'm talking about, I guess, the other end of that necessity. Food. Food in games.
Don't worry, there's always next time. You almost had it.
And I'm not talking about games where the whole point of the game is to make food, like Cooking Mama, or Overcooked, or whatever, or where the main theme of the game is food related. I'm talking about games that have nothing to do with food, that take the time to consider what people in the games eat, how they eat, where they eat, what they eat, because that level of detail is what separates Call of Duty from Skyrim. Not to say Call of Duty is a bad game, but what do the soldiers eat, huh? Ronald Reagan? We put Ronald Reagan in, but not a friendly lunch? To me, it's amazing, for example, to walk around The Witcher 3 and be able to pick up a chicken sandwich. I understand that the games are famous for the narrative choice and the romances and the gameplay and, all the quests, but to me, it's amazing that Geralt of Rivia can eat a fucking chicken sandwich. Does nobody think about this? Whenever I feed Geralt a chicken sandwich, I'm just like, wow, I could get this right now at Chick-fil-A. It's nice to relate to my heroes. And I'm not even saying that all the food in games has to be relatable to food standards in our world. In fact, it's even cooler if it doesn't, but it still makes sense. To go back to Fallout, has food that makes sense. It has rad roach meat, iguana on a stick, squirrel bits. In New Vegas, you can get different foraged plants to eat, and then they have sunset sarsaparilla and all sorts of pre-war food that is so filled with preservatives that, it still lasts to 200 years later when the games take place. And oftentimes the food is irradiated, just like the rest of the world, So this food that wouldn't fall into realistic by our standards totally makes sense in Fallout. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the main point of all this, is that food and other details, but in this case food, needs to make sense. Food can be a great storytelling device because everybody's hungry and everybody needs to eat. So by game developers talking about the world through food that players can pick up and interact with, you're elevating your game world. You're making it believable. Even a game like Fortnite, which, I have a lot to say about Fortnite, but the fact that the food in that game is like slurp juice and burgers, they know their audience. They get it. That's exactly what I imagine a Fortnite player consuming. Slurp juice. Saints Row. I don't remember a single thing about that original Saints Row game other than the fact that their main fast food restaurant is called Freckle Bitches. Freckle Bitches. That is so funny. So fitting. I literally don't remember anything else other than hearing an advertisement driving around for Freckle Bitches. And sure, I don't remember ever actually like seeing a player eat the food. But taking care to show that the Saints Row world is a parody of our world, even down to the fast food. Freckle Bitches. God tier humor. God tier comedy. Stardew Valley is a really interesting one to me because, yes, the main point of the game is kind of growing food, but to me, the mechanic of how the player consumes food is different than the, growing food mechanic, wherein you have to like learn how to cook and it's gradual and you have to pick up recipes over time. And in the beginning, you don't have anything to cook, but it becomes that you can make beautiful dishes, that you can buy ingredients for, but you can make the ingredients yourself and save them over time to make your favorite dishes. And the food is realistic because, Stardew Valley is a game that takes place in basically our real world, but, a little different. So you can make realistic foods, but the fact that learning more foods over time is like part of the gradual growth of Stardew Valley. It just fits the game world really well. It's slow and it's beautiful, methodical, just like the rest of the game. It's all a vibe. Food is a vibe. The Sims. What is more iconic than Goopy Carbonara? That game, clearly there's many mechanics going on, but food is a basic need in The Sims, just like it is in real life. But The Sims is by no means a cooking game, but you do a lot of cooking and a lot of eating because you need to survive. And you have all sorts of options, just like in real life. And it's skill-based, just like in real life. In Stardew Valley, there's no skill necessarily. You just have to wait over time to gain, the produce and the specific ingredients that you need on your farm. But in The Sims, you can't make anything but cereal and animal crackers if you don't know how. Your Sim can go their whole life eating peas. Just straight bowls of peas as a quick meal. If you don't invest time into growing your skill. Just like in real life. And that's so iconic. It's realistic, but silly at the same time. It's like a dollhouse version of food. And The Sims is a giant dollhouse, basically. Do you get what I'm getting? Do you get what I'm saying? The food available in that game, when it's available, is reflective of real life, but in a simplified, silly kind of way, which reflects the gameplay. You see what I'm saying? It's like a loop. Everything has to call back. It's like a good essay. A video game is like a good essay. All of the points you're making have to call back to the main theme. And in The Sims, Goopy Carbonara calls back to the fact that this game is silly, but ultimately reflective of kind of real life living. Minecraft. Nobody ever talks about food in Minecraft, but food is a big deal in Minecraft too. There's a hunger bar. It's one of the major, it's like the only major need. Like, you don't have to sleep. You don't have to shit. You do have to survive like physical damage, but that's not like, you don't have to have damage be inflicted upon you, but you have to eat. All foraged. It's all found foods, grown foods, stuff like that. But it's unlike Stardew Valley. I mean, you need to know recipes both ways, but Minecraft recipes are generally more simple. But at the same time, if you're playing a proper survival world, way harder to find. There's nothing more iconic than the slurp slurp sound. But Skyrim's world is homey. It's warm. It's inviting in a way that no other Elder Scrolls game is. And yes, it's filled with danger and excitement and adventure and all that crap. But at the same time, being in the cities, going inside of the inns, it feels so warm and inviting almost, as a contrast to the harsh cold of outside. And I think that that's really beautiful, and it probably explains why Grandma Shirley spends so much time in Skyrim, is because the game is so inviting in a strange way. And the food reflects that. You know, you have your standard cooked meats, but it's a lot of bread and cheese and tomatoes and wine. And, you know, in Hearthfire you have things like dumplings. And are there pies? I feel like there are pies. No, maybe not. Well, either way, the food in that game is like, honestly, I wish my entire diet was. It kind of is. It's like charcuterie. The appeal of charcuterie in the modern day. All the food of Skyrim could be in a charcuterie board. And that's lovely. Red Dead 2, you know, is a really complex game in basically every mechanic and system in that game. And that includes the food systems in that game. You know, you can hunt the food yourself in terms of like meat, or you can go buy canned goods, or you can go order like a proper sit down steak kind of meal before you have a date with your lady who you know is going to reject you, but you fancy her anyway, you know, that kind of thing. Well, that reflects the game. Clearly, if every single system in that game is going to be highly complex and detailed and realistic to a fault, then so should the food. And, you know, although I don't agree with the practice of slave labor on the part of Rockstar, they do make cool-ass games. Another hyper-realistic game when it comes to all the systems is Kingdom Come Deliverance, and the food. That's the first time I've ever in a game seen a mechanic where you overeat. The first time I ever tried food in that game, it was just like slop, like it looked like chili. I'm sure it wasn't chili because it was like medieval Bohemia, but it looked like chili, and I just kept slurping and slurping, and then it was like, girl, you ate too much. And so then Henry just walked around like, you know, that game uses realism almost as like a handicap, but it works, it fits. In the Outer Worlds, food plays a huge role because these people are surviving on colonies, you know, and in the very first world of the game, everybody's talking about salt tuna, which is, you know, this made-up fake meat product that everybody's surviving off of and getting horrible health effects from, is this freaking salt tuna. And the factory that everybody works at to produce the salt tuna that they eat, and it's this whole, like, political commentary about food and how it exists in our world, really, but in the Outer Worlds, it's the main, you know, fight of this particular colony. And so they're using food not only to explain the motivations of the world, but to also show how it affects these people who have to survive off of this fake meat. You know, salt tuna, that's all you got. I mean, Outer Worlds is weird, though, because you're constantly picking up useless food, constantly, all the time. So I'm like, well, why did you just eat this other shit that I find lying around all day? But that's neither here nor there. Even in Dragon Age Inquisition, food is not, like, something that you pick up, like in other games. Like, in all these other games, you can pick up food and hold it in your inventory. But Dragon Age uses food very sparingly, like acknowledging that it exists through dialogue, or even making fun of food. Like, you can pick up like a cheese wheel shield and like a giant piece of meat on a bone as a sword in Inquisition. I don't know why. It's funny. Like, you see food lying around, but that's not a part of the Inquisitor's day-to-day. But at the same time, there's instances like Sarah throwing a pie, or people getting drunk, or like mentions of coal stealing, I think it was turnips. You know, food plays a role in the world, but you don't have to clutter your inventory with it. And I appreciate that, actually, a lot on Dragon Age Inquisition's part, because inventory space is limited enough in that game. I don't need to fill it with cheese wheels like Skyrim, but it's fun that they exist. I said Call of Duty before, y'all put Ronald Reagan in your games, but you won't put in a chicken sandwich? That's why I don't play Call of Duty anymore. Assassin's Creed, the only time I can remember food being interactable in any concept, in any like way, is in Unity, where you can eat cake, which is funny. You know what, Ubisoft, the cake is funny in France. I get it. Let them eat cake. Ha ha ha. They create these huge, like, expansive, realistic-ish historical setting worlds, and they never talk about food. And obviously, of course, I mean, I've played most every Assassin's Creed game, and I'm not going to remember all of it. Like, okay, you could say that you can hunt, meats and furs, but you only take the fur, not the meat. Y'all build an entire Greece. You build all of Greece. And I still don't know what Cassandra eats. Borderlands. They have talked about food before in the games, but it's like, what do these people, what is the food source in this wacky, weird, post-apocalyptic kind of world? What does Tiny Tina eat for breakfast? She seems like a Mountain Dew kind of girl. She seems like, not Mountain Dew. Well, maybe Mountain Dew, like a Monster instead of breakfast and lunch kind of thing, but I don't know, because you won't tell me. You won't tell me, Gearbox. What do they eat? And even Mass Effect. Like, I just praised Dragon Age for talking about food, but really they're not very good about it. Mass Effect, the only time I can remember anybody mentioning food at all was when, in the Citadel DLC, Shepard crashed a sushi restaurant and then people couldn't eat there anymore. Let me see the sushi. Let me see it. What are you holding back for? I want to see the space sushi. Like, what if it's like Krogan meat or some crazy shit? Like, they had so many opportunities to explore food in that space universe, and it's like never addressed. So basically, the point I'm trying to say in talking about all of this game food shit is that in terms of the greater context of game design, your game will be infinitely better and more believable if you take the time to consider the basic needs of the world, like the basic needs of the people who live there and how they're being met, and all the circumstances of how people survive. Because me remembering as a person, not just as a game designer, that certain games have toilets. Like, I remember probably every toilet I've seen in a game. I don't remember most narratives that I play or most characters that I meet in a lot of games, but I'll remember what people were eating, where they were eating it, what it looked like, because those details are so interesting to understanding the world as a whole. Like I said, that's what separates a game world, a game universe, from a game level. A player will feel so much less lonely in a world that feels lived in, that feels like they are not alone, than if they have to just explore, an empty pit. The devil is in the details, and I'm never gonna forget that fucking Witcher 3 chicken sandwich. Never.